Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you practice standing still or practice your balance or walking in your home, it just isn't translating to the real world? If so, you are not alone, and this video is perfect for you. Probably one of the most common complaints that I hear are from people who feel like their balance confidence is improving in their home, but anytime they think about anything outside of that, walking in a grocery store or a department store, or maybe just even walking outside, they feel like their confidence just goes in the toilet, and even worse, sometimes they avoid those situations altogether. If that is you, today we are going to go over the 3 most common mistakes that I think absolutely will be a barrier to you taking those balance exercises or that balance retraining into real life. If you're new to this channel, I'm Tara, I'm a neurologic physical therapist, and on this channel we talk about anything and everything related to mobility, health, fitness, and mindset, with the end goal of empowering you with as many tools as possible to take full ownership of your rehab and your overall health to live a more active, mobile, and pain-free life. With all that said, today we are going to go over the 3 most common mistakes that most people make when it comes to hitting a plateau or maybe not reaching your full potential when it comes to balance activities. And mistake number 1 is you're practicing your balance standing still. So let me just paint a picture for you what most of you are probably doing. You are sometimes getting these exercises off of this channel or maybe from your therapist, which are you go home, you practice standing with your feet shoulder width apart. Then you challenge yourself a little bit, challenge yourself by bringing your feet so that they're touching. Then you put them in what we call near tandem, and then you put them in tandem position. And the goal is that you hold that for as long as possible without losing your balance. I have probably just described what 90% of you are doing as kind of like your balance routine. This is great when you're first starting out or when you're in the kind of early stages of recovery, but these are called static standing balance activities. And unfortunately, we are not standing still most of the time when we really need to practice or implement some of the balance strategies necessary to maintain your center of mass within your base of support. I've talked about this a lot on this channel. Center of mass is your trunk, base of support are your feet. Balance is the ability to maintain your trunk, your center of mass within your base of support, and quickly and automatically bring your center of mass back within your base of support when it is perturbed or disrupted or shifted outside of that base or maybe close to the edges of that base. And all those exercises that I just described, those are static standing balance activities. But think about the last time you felt insecure with your balance, or even worse, had a near fall or maybe even a fall. You weren't standing still. You were most likely reaching into a cabinet, stepping over a curb, turning to look towards a family member, or turning to exit your closet, or stepping backwards when you are opening a door. What do all of these things have in common? They are dynamic. And what is the downside with static standing balance? They aren't challenging your brain to prepare it to quickly and automatically react when you're in these dynamic situations, i.e., your trunk is moving to what we call the limits of stability. So when your center of mass, your trunk, kind of reaches the limits of that base of support, you want your body and your brain to quickly and automatically bring that center of mass back within the base of support, or to a place that's more comfortable where you're not as close to what I call the edge of the cliff. What do you need to do instead? You need to challenge those limits of stability. And this can be something as easy as reaching for objects where your center of mass is moving towards those limits of stability and training your body how to bring it back. Now, there's the potential that you're going to reach a little bit too far and outside what we call your limit of stability. And in that situation, you're training your brain how to quickly and automatically react to bring that center of mass back in a safe position so that you don't lose your balance and fall. You are not challenging or working on improving those systems if you're not working on dynamic standing balance. So one exercise, very easy you can do, like I've already said, is reaching, putting something just outside your comfort zone, but where you know that you're not going to fall. So I will usually set tables up or chairs, or you guys have seen me do stools and cones. You want to feel like you're having to reach for something on that stool that's just slightly outside your comfort zone to practice being able, when you get to that point, to bring your center of mass back. The other thing you can do that's super important is move your feet. So the most basic thing that your therapist could be doing with you in therapy, or that you could be doing on your own at home, if you hold on to something to get your feet in like a staggered position to practice those static standing balance activities. One easy thing that you could start doing in a safe manner is, instead of holding on to something to position your feet in stagger standing or tandem, start working on trying to get your feet into that position without holding on. That's how you challenge your balance. Now it's a little bit more dynamic because you're moving that base of support around. You're going from single leg standing to what we call bipedal standing, where you're on 2 feet. All of that is adding a dynamic component to that static standing balance activity. So at the very least, keep doing the routine you're doing, but try and incorporate getting into that position as part of that balance activity. The other activities that I love are curtsy squats, crossover stepping, crossing over midline. Again, you're challenging those limits of stability a little bit differently, but you're also adding a dynamic component by moving your feet around and really teaching your brain how to quickly and automatically get that center of mass within that base of support. And that either comes from using muscles in your legs, not your hands, not grabbing for something and pulling yourself back, which is what a lot of you do, but using the muscles in your leg to bring the center of mass back within your base of support. Or another strategy we use is we actually move our base of support. So we move our feet to either get them wider or further apart. Somehow we move them to get that center of mass back within that base of support. Great activity. Like I said, curtsy squats and crossover stepping. And then the other one, and this seems obvious, but some of you just aren't practicing this, are turn steps. Literally stand in a corner, because you know I love a corner, and just practice turning. It's going to practice crossover standing, which I just talked about. You're changing that base of support, but again, you're adding a dynamic component. So turn to the right, and so that you don't, and just to make sure you don't get dizzy, on the next rep, turn to the left and do a full 360-degree turn. Cannot stress enough how valuable those exercises are. All right, and then mistake number 2 is not challenging the sensory system involved with balance. So what is the sensory system? The sensory system are all of the information that's coming to the brain that the brain needs to process and utilize to figure out where our body is in space. And if it's not in an ideal position, it has the necessary information to quickly and automatically get our center of mass back within our base of support. So what are these sensory systems? Vision, eyes, information coming in, right? We use walls, reference points to give our brain information about how we're oriented in space. Now, perfect example of what happens when this system isn't being challenged is someone that I've worked with recently. They're fine when they're in buildings, but they get very, very nervous whenever they're outside. One potential reason for that is you've lost some of those reference points, i.e. walls, that you are using to help orient yourself in space to vertical. Okay, so we use our eyes a ton to maintain our balance. We also use something called the vestibular organ in the inner ear. I've talked about this quite a bit on this channel, so I've done a lot of in-depth videos on this. I will link some of those videos in the description below, but very, very simplified and brief. We've got these three canals that sit on different axes in our inner ear. They all have little crystals inside of them. And then there's little hairs that stick out from the walls on these canals. And when we turn our head in a specific direction, those crystals will spin in one of those canals. It'll stimulate those hairs. Those hairs stimulate a nerve that sends information to the brain that our head is moving in a particular direction. That is extremely simplified. Again, I've done full videos on that. But that vestibular system is sensory information going to our brain, giving it data as to where our body is in space. Very, very important. And then we have something called proprioceptors in our joints and in our muscles that sense when a muscle is being lengthened. That gives our brain information. So, like, let's say, for instance, we're bending to one side. The brain needs that information. We also have sensory receptors in our feet that sense pressure. When that pressure shifts to one side of our foot or the other, that's also extremely valuable information. All of that is super, super necessary and valuable to help our brain to figure out when we're vertical, when we're oriented to vertical, when we're not, and how to correct that to restore our body into vertical. And very important within our base of support. Why does all of this information matter to you? Well, what I said, mistake number 2 was we're not challenging these sensory systems enough. And 9 times out of 10, or I don't know what the exact statistic on this, but there's data that suggests that as we age, we become more reliant on vision. So we use vision as our primary data source to maintain or to give our brain information about where our body is in space. And when we do that, these other senses kind of atrophy a little bit, for lack of a better term. They just become less useful to the brain because they're not getting utilized enough. So why is this a problem? Well, if you close your eyes or you turn your head or it's dark, so getting up in the middle of the night, we lose that visual information, which potentially has become your primary source for your brain to get information so that your brain knows when you're in vertical and when your center of mass is within your base of support and when it's not. Take that vision away, you lose that information. So those of you that have lost your balance bending down to maybe put your shoe on or pulling a shirt over your head or turning quickly and your feet get all tangled up, a lot of that has to do with your vision is disrupted in that brief moment when you need it the most to be able to quickly and automatically react when that center of mass is disrupted. I've talked about this recently in a couple of videos. What is the best exercise, whether you've had a stroke or not, if you're just aging, the best exercise you can do is visual deprivation, doing exercises safely with your eyes closed. That is the best way to strengthen these other senses, which will 1000% improve your balance confidence and decrease your risk of falling. So do the same exercises that you learned in physical therapy to start, standing with your feet side by side. Remember, I told you static balance activities aren't bad. They're just really good for the early stages. So they're a good foundation that is necessary. So maybe incorporate some of those static standing balance activities with visual deprivation, i.e. doing them with your eyes closed. I love a corner because a corner gives you a safety net in case you lose your balance. So start with static standing with your eyes closed, and then you can progress to standing with your eyes closed and maybe doing a forward backward step. And then when you get really good at that, practicing on different surfaces. So maybe eyes closed, standing on a piece of foam. What that piece of foam does is it's different, and it'll force your body to have to kind of read some of those that proprioceptive input. It'll kind of focus on it a little bit more because your brain senses that something is different. That's a very simplified explanation. There's a whole lot more that goes into why you would practice standing on foam, but hopefully that gives you like a good visual of one benefit of doing exercises. Standing on foam, you don't need to buy anything expensive. You could literally just throw a pillow on the floor that you don't mind standing on. That's a different surface. It's soft, perfect tool that most of you already have in your home, or even like a couch cushion, putting that on the floor. And then to make that static activity even a little bit more dynamic, you could practice walking with head turns. That's actually part of a battery of tests that we do to assess someone to see if they're at an increased risk of falls. Is we have someone walk and turn their head side to side, and if you're deviating more than 6 inches, that would indicate it's one component of one test. And like I said, we do a battery of tests, but you would get a lower score on that component of that test. So that does play a role in your mitigating your risk for falls, that you can walk a straight line. If you really wanted to do this test, and remember, this is just one component of one test that we do to assess to see if someone's at an increased risk for falls. 12 inches, see if you can walk within 12 inches without going outside of that space while you turn your head side to side. If you can, you're golden. If you can't, there's an opportunity for something that you can work on. And then number 3, which you guys predict what I'm going to say, it's not practicing enough. Okay, so what do I mean by this? This one's a little bit different. It's not just like you're not doing your therapy enough, but think about it. You are walking multiple times a day in your home to go to the bathroom, to go to the kitchen. This is all therapy. So you can be intentional in your home with these things that you're already doing that maybe you're missing a lot of opportunities to challenge your balance. So what do I mean by that? You can be more intentional when you're walking to the bathroom and try not to furniture walk. That would be one way to kind of get more practice in. Maybe not reach for something when you have to turn your head, which I'm sure a lot of you do for safety, but occasionally and with intention, meaning you're really focused on improving your balance system, you can do that head movement without grabbing on to something first. And then the other thing I see quite frequently is that people use their hands as their first line of defense, meaning you automatically reach for things in your home because it's familiar and you kind of already have your home mapped out, or your brain already has your home mapped out in your head, and you just automatically and even unconsciously probably reach for certain pieces of furniture that you've probably always reached for when you're turning that one corner in your house to get around that one piece of furniture, or that narrow space between a coffee table and a couch. You already maybe even unconsciously reach for certain things. One potential opportunity is not reach for that thing and be intentional and do it carefully and be thoughtful, and maybe make walking around your house more active and less passive. So what do I mean by that is that when you're reaching for that furniture or using your assistive device, that's very passive. You don't really have to think a whole lot. I also talk to caregivers about this as we're moving someone away from a caregiver holding on. Even when I train a caregiver, I say the second you stop holding on to someone and you just let go and you walk next to them, that activity just turned from a passive activity into a very active activity. So whether you're a caregiver or you're someone that's working on your balance, think about it. As long as you're holding on to something, you're getting most of your information from your hand and you don't really have to think. Your hand feels kind of through those proprioceptors when you're shifting away, when you're shifting towards, and you automatically respond to that. So I'd say that's very passive. The reason I bring up the caregiver thing is because I know there's some of you are caregivers and you watch this, and so you will relate to that. The second you don't hold on to someone, you have to be so much more engaged. You can't be texting on your phone as you walk them to the bathroom. It's a whole different scenario. Same goes for someone that's working on their balance. The second you let go, you have to be much more engaged in that activity. So it's gone from passive, you're holding onto your assistive device or the back of the couch or the chair, dining room chair, and now you're letting go. It's much more active. Your brain is being challenged a lot more. You have to be a lot more engaged. But what happens is you get that neuroplasticity. You train the brain to quickly and automatically use your legs and your muscles to quickly and automatically bring that base of support back within, or bring that center of mass back within that base of support, which is the ultimate goal, quickly and automatically. Okay, so in summary, what are the 3 most common mistakes that potentially are contributing to you not getting your balance confidence back to where you want it so that you can walk in the community, go grocery shopping, walk in that department store, go to that farmer's market? What is interfering from you getting back to that point? You're only practicing static standing balance activities, and you're not challenging those limits of stability that I just talked about. 2 is you're relying on visual sensory input as your primary and only source of input. For some of you, you aren't challenging all of the sensory systems involved in maintaining our balance and quickly and automatically responding to a balance disruption. And 3, you're doing more passive balance at home, and there's an opportunity there to make those activities a little bit more active and engaging your brain to get that neuroplasticity, to get to that end goal of being able to quickly and automatically adjust your center of mass when it is disrupted, which is what I think many of you envision as being a very scary scenario or condition that something in your gut's telling you you're not prepared for that in certain situations. It's restoring that, getting your body and your brain prepared for those situations when you're in situations that are not within your control totally. So there's some uncontrollable factors, and there's maybe some unfamiliar terrain, which is not the case when you're just walking in your home. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, and you want to get more videos to take your mobility and your rehab to the next level, and you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so that you will get notified every time I upload new videos. If you're someone who feels like you're just floundering and you want to go a little bit deeper, we do have a membership program. With your membership, you get access to the entire vault, which includes an entire list of balance retraining exercises that I give to my patients that I see in person. But as a gold member, you also get access to our monthly webinars and our monthly Q&As. So if you really want to take your rehab to the next level, you can visit Rehab-HQ, where you can learn more about our membership program, sign up, or schedule a discovery call with someone who can hear the difficulties that you're having and help you decide to see if one of our programs is right for you. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day.